It's about 3 weeks since Joe Biden's inauguration as the 46th President of the United States. Traditionally, in the first 100 days of a new presidency are significant, and they set the tone for the whole term. We saw President Biden on his first day signing orders reversing many decisions of his predecessor, in particular the order to rejoin the Paris Agreement on climate change. He knew that it was important to start as he meant to go on. The early days in any new appointment are important. So, what about Jesus? This morning, as we turn to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, we have a taste of those early days of Jesus. And we find him proclaiming the gospel, calling his disciples, and then on the Sabbath, teaching with authority and performing an exorcism in the synagogue. That was last week. And now today we read that he is going to Simon's home for a meal, healing his mother-in-law as well, and then in the evening receiving many sick people who are brought to him for healing. It seems Jesus wasted no time in those early days of his ministry. He has clearly made an impression, and many people are following him. They want to see and hear more, know more. Clearly, this is no ordinary man, no ordinary teacher. And then suddenly he is up and away, disappearing off at dawn to pray in the silence of a lonely place, much to the bemusement of his followers. Everybody is searching for you, they say, as they track him down. But rather than explaining himself, Jesus simply says, "Let us go elsewhere so that I can preach there too, because that is why I came." For him, it seems it was enough to touch people's lives once, to plant a seed or to heal a wound, confident that their path would never be the same again. Follow me, it turns out, is an invitation to be part of something dynamic, unstable, topsy-turvy, upside down, the opposite of good order. Traveling light, not turning back, meeting, challenging, healing, and then moving on. No one, it seems, meets Jesus and stays the same. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know, and never be the same? We sing that often, don't we? It is at this point that I pause and reflect on the early church. In particular, I think about the Apostle Paul, who seemingly never met Jesus, yet understood that dynamic instability, that spirit-driven moving on, which enabled those early Christians to learn and grow together. And of course, it is impossible not to reflect further that in due course, following our inborn desire for security and order, we have assumed that our calling was to build networks of institutions where everyone could access orthodox, properly ordered, sound worship and sound doctrine and good teaching. And that over the years, these institutions became both comfortable and influential. This was the way we did church. But you don't need me to tell you this morning that those times are now past, and indeed we may mourn their loss. We seek stability and order. We don't work well with uncertainty. And yet, many of us have struggled through these months of COVID-19, still struggling through these months of COVID-19, perhaps more than we can say. Our foundations have been rocked, and the expectations of our normal everyday lives has been called into question. But we've also been reminded, I think, in very practical ways, that the church is God's people together, our relationships with one another and with God and not our buildings. Our buildings may be empty at the moment, but the church, the people of God, are busy and active still. And I wonder then if it's time to take more seriously the unsettling nature of the ministry of Jesus, and to discover that being a follower of Christ today means allowing Christ to touch, teach, and heal us so that we are free to move on, really free. Willing to give thanks for the past, to hold on to what is helpful, but to let go of those things which hold us back. Maybe we might say have passed their sell-by date or are not relevant in today's world. To risk working in new ways. Accepting that being a disciple of Jesus in 2021 may mean working differently, traveling with less baggage of practice and doctrine, accepting change and finding a new confidence that individually and together we can make a difference. And I always like to call to mind practical examples, and what came to my mind this morning, I think about Interact. These are local instances, but you can think wider if you're outside our area. I call to mind Interact, looking at setting up a food pantry, another way of building relations and getting to know our neighbours, rather than a food bank, which is giving out donations. A food pantry which helps us to work together, where the poor and the better off are not separated one from another. A new way of working with our community to support one another, giving and receiving, receiving and giving, because indeed we do all have needs. And then I also call to mind the exciting plans for Thrive, our children and youth partnership, to work with Carmanor Community School and with Interact to establish a faith-based youth club open to all young people. And again, working with partners to show and to share the love of Jesus. I thought about, looking back a little, I thought about Leeds Citizens, still active out and about. And then I even began to wonder about Love Meanwood and the work being set up around environment issues. Is this another opportunity as we face the challenges of climate change? Wherever we are from this morning, Meanwood and Chapel Allerton, Moortown, West Park, Wigton or further afield, think about your own neighbourhood and the ways that we may already work outside there, but are there better and different ways that we can look at working and moving on? Could it be that being church is not only about worshipping and meeting in our buildings, useful and loved as they are, but discovering with Paul the joy of sharing his message and recognizing the presence of the Lord, not only when we step aside to pray, but also when we pitch in together to make a difference? And URC friends, how might that fit for our Leeds partnership? How might that fit? Let us recognize and hold on to all that is good, not in those cliched words, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but letting go of those things that no longer work for us, recognizing that life has changed, not just for our churches, but for our world. Time perhaps to do something different. And finally, food for thought. Basic, not new, but always relevant. In this year of lockdowns and isolation, in this past year of lockdowns, where have we found that space to be in God's presence? To find renewal and comfort and strength, to be sustained. maybe out walking, in the garden, in the familiarity of your home, with others over Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp, through books, online worship, through music, through craft? Or have we found that space when preparing the vegetables or even washing the dishes? We all need that space. And secondly, as we look out at our communities and beyond, as we ponder the opportunities that arise, how confident are we about sharing that source of our hope and our faith? We may find it hard to talk about God and to talk about Jesus, but we can talk about how it is for us. This is my experience. This is what has helped me. This is how I feel. No right or wrong answers here. And I believe that at this time, many out there are looking for those answers and are ready to listen. Are we ready to share? And how will we be able to do this? By setting our lives within the wonder of God's love and grace. That love and grace that we know in Jesus Christ, forgiving and healing. This is indeed the good news. May we be open to receive, to hold it, and to share it. Amen.